Coming up on a newscast. South Korea launched an advisory committee focusing on ways to deal with the pandemic. Authorities warn the nation is in a new wave of the virus because of the BA.5 variant. Japan's ruling coalition secured a sweeping victory in Sunday's upper house election. This comes as Seoul's top diplomat coordinates a visit to Tokyo. South Korea and the U.S. prepared to hold joint training on August 22nd. Changes to improve military readiness in the upcoming drills are being discussed. Hello, your week's off to a smooth start. I'm Daniel Che. Let's begin with our top story. South Korea has launched an advisory committee to deal with the pandemic. The team of experts held their first meeting on Monday under the Yoon administration's pledge to devise science-based quarantine measures. Participants discussed ways to better respond to the resurgence of the virus in the summer. They emphasized the need to focus on minimizing the number of deaths and to protect those at high risk by strengthening the nation's medical system. Authorities believe Korea is in a new wave of the virus because of the BA.5 variant and will be announcing new measures on Wednesday. President Yoon will stop taking questions from reporters on his way to work for the time being due to concerns over a resurgence of COVID-19. According to the top office, the short presser will be temporarily halted to minimize contact with other people. Yoon has been speaking to reporters at the press line on the way to work, but on Monday morning he skipped the presser. The sessions will resume as soon as the COVID-19 situation stabilizes. As of Monday, there have been 11 confirmed cases among reporters in the span of 5 days. The new Financial Services Commission chair pledged to stabilize the markets and take bold moves to deregulate. Kim Joo-hyun is the fourth official under this administration to be approved without a hearing. President Yoon approved his appointment to the post Monday. He had earlier asked the National Assembly to send a report on the confirmation hearing, which is the usual procedure, but got no reply. This was because no hearing has taken place due to disputes in Parliament over committee chairmanships. So far, 4 of Yoon's nominees for higher-level posts have stepped down over social controversies, but his 18-member cabinet is almost fully in place, the only vacant post being that of the health minister. Government ministries are giving their first reports to President Yoon through the week. First up was the Ministry of Economy and Finance, which touched on plans to deal with inflation, boost trade, and stabilize the markets. Jung brings the highlights from that session.
South Korean government ministries have begun making reports to the president this week, with the first to go on Monday being the Ministry of Economy and Finance. The report was delivered at the Yongsan presidential office, and unlike in the past, the president's session with Finance Minister Chu Kyung-ho was kept small for the sake of efficiency. The vice minister said the agenda covered major projects now underway.
This time we have selected projects that we're working on in 7 key areas and will report their progress and future plans.
With inflation soaring, the top priority is stabilizing people's livelihoods. The Finance Ministry will put together a task force to closely monitor and stabilize consumer prices and will come up with measures next month ahead of a national holiday, Chuseok, which comes in September. Another big pillar covers economic issues at home and abroad. The ministry plans to strengthen supply chains in key industries, including semiconductors and shipbuilding. Also, it'll preemptively deal with risks in the real estate and financial markets and long-term issues, including the shrinking population and carbon neutrality. Under the Yoon administration's private-led economy policy, the ministry has set up a private-public task force tasked with finding unnecessary regulations to eliminate and plans to announce measures within this month. And as the national debt hits record highs, the ministry reported its major fiscal reform plan, the details of which will be announced in September. Other major topics are restructuring government spending to further support key projects and reforming public institutions to enhance efficiency and provide quality services to the public. Also, there'll be major reforms to the tax system focused on revitalizing people's livelihoods, which will be announced next week. President Yoon told Finance Minister that measures should be in place to ease the tax burden on public who are suffering due to surging inflation. Also, he added that preemptive measures are needed to stabilize prices during the national Chuseok holiday. The next to give their reports on Tuesday will be the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy and the Ministry of SMEs and Startups. 엄지영, Arirang News.
The People Power Party will have its full leader take on the duties of acting chairman for 6 months following the suspension of Lee Jun-seok. The ruling bloc is trying to deal with this internal crisis as soon as possible to minimize the damage to the Yoon administration. Lee Jung-eun has the details.
Following the suspension of his party chair Lee Jun-seok over his alleged attempt to cover up his sexual bribery scandal, the ruling People Power Party has adopted a resolution that will be led by full leader Kwon Song-dong for the next 6 months.
The party will do its utmost to operate under the system of acting chairman and bring the party together to overcome the crisis.
Full leader Kwon will be carrying over the duties, not the chairmanship rights. The party has been drawing a clear line between the two because under party rules, the transition of rights occurs when the position is vacant, while duties can be taken over by someone else in case of an accident. And lawmakers have come to a consensus that the suspension should be regarded as accident. The decision comes after lawmakers held a series of meetings throughout the day on how to deal with the crisis. The possibility of launching an emergency leadership or electing a new leader have also been discussed. But the party has ruled out those options because a party convention under party rules can only be held in case of a leadership vacancy. That means Chairman Lee will come back after his suspension ends, leaving just 6 months until the end of his term.
Because the suspension lasts for 6 months, the acting chairman system lasts for the same amount of time. But things are hard to predict as politics are always changing.
The party said it has not discussed the decision with Chairman Lee before it was announced. Lee has been silent for the past few days, apparently deciding a response based on the decision from Monday. Lee Jun-seok's suspension marks the first time in South Korean history their ruling party chair has faced such a punishment, and just 2 months since Yoon Suk-yeol administration kicked off. The party's swift decision is seen as a way to make sure the government's power can be maintained in its early days. Lee Jung-eun, Arirang News.
Seoul's foreign minister held a presser to outline the country's diplomatic achievements of the past 2 months and to lay out future tasks. Park Jin reiterated the government's plans to restore ties with Tokyo and that trips to Japan is being arranged. Min Soo-hyun shares with us his remarks.
Foreign Minister Park Jin has again stressed that South Korea will continue to make efforts to resolve its pending issues with Japan. Speaking to reporters on Monday, Park said the two countries are in talks to arrange his planned visit to Tokyo, adding that it will take place at a mutually convenient time. The minister also said that the government seeks to build a cooperative relationship with Japan, one that's in line with their shared interests and values. More importantly, he noted that restoring trust in their ties was necessary. Regarding former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's memorial service, he said a delegation will be sent to pay respects.
As you know, the Yoon administration is swiftly working to improve relations with Japan. So once Japan confirms the memorial service schedule of former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, we plan to dispatch a high-level delegation with our utmost courtesy.
When asked about China, he said South Korea will continue to enhance its diplomacy with the country, but stressed that mutual respect and trust is important in their relations. He said the healthiest relationship between the two would be for Beijing to respect Seoul and for Seoul to understand Beijing. Noting that China remains to be a significant partner, Park plans to arrange a visit to China for further constructive talks. He also expects his Chinese counterpart Wang Yi to visit South Korea this year. Meanwhile, in North Korea, Park said the government was drawing up a roadmap to include what's being referred to as President Yoon's audacious plan that's aimed at improving the regime's economy once it gives up its nuclear weapons. Without specifying the exact details, the minister said the roadmap will include various incentives to convince the North to denuclearize through a step-by-step approach. He called on Pyongyang to return to dialogue and said that talks with relevant partners, such as the U.S. and China, are underway to facilitate such a move. Min Soo-hyun, Arirang News.
Japanese voters went to the polls on Sunday and gave the late former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's party a major victory in the election for the Diet's upper house. The current PM and his coalition will be able to govern without interruption until 2025. Kim Da-mi explains further.
Japan's ruling coalition secured a sweeping victory in Sunday's somber upper house election, held in the shadow of the assassination of former conservative PM Shinzo Abe. The former leader of the Liberal Democratic Party took 63 out of 125 seats contested, securing its majority with its junior partner Komito in the 248-member chamber. While the upper house election does not signify a change of government, it does effectively show public sentiment on the sitting government. Such a strong showing helps Prime Minister Fumio Kishida consolidate his role and drive his party's key policies forward, including the push to revise Japan's constitution. In terms of foreign affairs, hopes are high that frosty South Korea-Japan relations, held back by historical disputes, may get back on track. But some experts are not too hopeful that Kishida's firmer control of the government will be a game changer for the bilateral ties.
If he already won a lower house election last October. So if he really wanted to push ahead, taking concrete measures to improve ties, he could have done that already.
But with the launch of the new Yoon-seok administration, South Korea has taken one step closer to Tokyo by rolling out a new joint consultative body over compensation for forced wartime labor. Now could be an appropriate time for the Kishida government to respond to Seoul's efforts, some experts say.
In order for the Yoon administration to smoothly persuade victims or seek their understanding, I think Prime Minister Kishida also needs his own cooperative attitude or guidance.
Hurdles do lie ahead for Kishida, who may be walking on eggshells around his conservative Liberal Democratic Party when it comes to historical conflicts between South Korea and Japan. However, in the aftermath of Abe's assassination, Kishida may now look to put his more conciliatory and mediating hue to the fore. And that might mean there could be room for high-level talks on the sidelines of a visit by a South Korean delegation to a memorial service for Abe this week. South Korea and Japan are reportedly on the final stages of arranging a visit to Tokyo by Seoul's top diplomat Park Jin-too, with South Korea's foreign ministry hopeful that the meeting can take place. Kim Da-mi, Arirang News.
From August, Seoul and Washington will be holding regular joint military drills held twice a year. The exercise is scaled back in recent years, but that's about to change and may even involve field training as well. Bae Eun-ji provides a glimpse of what to expect.
South Korea's military will be conducting virtual military exercises with the U.S. from August 22nd to September 1st. But an informed military source reportedly said Monday that the two countries are considering whether to include live field training and that this will be decided after reviewing different types of situations. The biannual joint military exercise is held every spring and summer, but had been scaled back in recent years. First in 2018 as part of efforts to denuclearize North Korea, after then-President Donald Trump held a summit with the North leader Kim Jong-un in Singapore. And it wasn't able to go back to the same scale as before because of the pandemic. So for the past few years, only virtual training called CCPT, or computer-simulated command post exercise, has been held, using minimal personnel. Meanwhile, the upcoming joint training comes at a time when North Korea has also begun its summertime military drill. After heavy rain, some of the North's military units are also reportedly working on repairing damage from flooding.
Starting July, the North Korean military appears to be conducting its summertime military exercise. But we assess part of this has been affected by COVID-19 and heavy rain in the area, and we are closely monitoring the situation.
Amid rising tensions on the Korean peninsula after Pyongyang was seen almost ready for its first nuclear test in 5 years and growing missile threats, Seoul is trying to bolster its joint defense readiness with Washington. Bae Eun-ji, Arirang News.
Elsewhere around the world, a Russian missile strike on an apartment building in the Donetsk region killed at least 18 people, but Moscow continues to deny that it's targeting civilians. Ukraine is calling for the West to send modern air defense systems. Jung Eun-ju has the latest.
Russian rockets hit an apartment block in Chasiv Yar in the Donetsk region of eastern Ukraine on Saturday evening. According to Ukrainian authorities, 18 people have been found dead in the rubble so far, and dozens more are trapped under the debris.
I spent the whole night in the street. I ran after the hit and stayed on the street. I thought it would hit again, but in the end, it hit 3 times. I couldn't stay inside.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky reiterated his call to the West for support with modern air defense systems, saying the Russian attacks on civilians are clearly deliberate. 21 civilians were killed on July 1st when a Russian missile hit an apartment building in Odessa, and 19 were killed last month after the bombing of a shopping center in Kremenchuk. Russia, however, denies targeting civilians, and the Russian Defense Ministry claimed on Saturday that its troops had destroyed a hangar with U.S.-supplied weapons near Chasiv Yar in the Donetsk region. Meanwhile, Ukraine's Minister of Defense Alexei Reznikov said Sunday in an interview with British newspaper The Times that President Zelensky had ordered Ukraine's military to retake coastal areas in the south that are vital to the country's economy. Reznikov also said that Ukraine has 1 million troops ready equipped with Western weapons. As Ukraine calls for more Western weapons aid, Taiwan's Minister of National Defense denied on Sunday that the country had provided Ukraine with 60mm mortar shells, as was reported in a recent article by an Ukrainian news agency. The minister said that the shells shown in the article did not use a system of serial numbers employed by the Taiwanese military, and added that Taiwan supports the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Ukraine. While Ukraine struggles with securing advanced weapons quickly, analysts say that Russia is in desperate need of soldiers and is trying to make up for the shortfall by promising volunteers substantial cash incentives. The New York Times reported that Russia is utilizing stealth mobilization to bring in new recruits without resorting to a politically risky national draft, and that the Kremlin is relying on impoverished ethnic minorities, Ukrainians from separatist territories, mercenaries, and militarized National Guard units. 정은주, Arirang News.
Moving on to other stories now, the global population is rising, but the growth rate is slowing down. According to a UN report released to mark World Population Day, the global growth rate went below 1% for the first time since 1950. The population decline is accelerating in high-income countries like Japan. It also stated some nations, including Germany, would need to rely on immigrants to maintain a stable growth rate. However, even with the decrease in growth, the UN expects the world's population to surpass the 8 billion mark on around November 15th. Many priceless pieces of Korea's cultural heritage have been lost over the centuries. Some estimate more than 200,000. But a number of them are now on display at the National Palace Museum of Korea. Kim Hyun-seok has the full story.
Years of colonization, wars, invasions, and looting have left holes in the country's treasure trove. Valuable cultural artifacts ended up missing or stranded overseas. But about 40 cultural artifacts have been safely returned home. They're on show here at the National Palace Museum of Korea. Some are on display to the public for the first time in history. Like this box with inlaid mother-of-pearl, plum, bird, and bamboo design, and this book of calligraphy by Joseon kings, both from the late Joseon dynasty. Exhibition opened on the 7th of this month through the help of Overseas Korean Cultural Heritage Foundation, and it will run until September 25th.
This exhibition highlights the efforts to bring back our cultural heritage that were overseas. Through this exhibition, we wanted many people to think about what we should do to protect our heritage overseas.
We've calculated the distance our employees have traveled to retrieve these artifacts over the past 10 years. The sheer distance added up would be the same as about 160 times around the Earth. We have infinite responsibility to bring back what's our symbolic cultural heritage.
Every artifact here tells its own story. Some were lost during a war. Some came back through donation or an auction. These seals were brought home through joint efforts led by South Korea and the U.S., who worked together to track down and bring them back home. But there's still much to recover.
About 210,000 cultural properties are still overseas. A lot of cultural artifacts are wilting away because we don't know where they are or because places that have them can't take proper care of them.
As for now, there is no international law that guarantees the safe return of cultural heritages, even ones that have been illegally taken, making these cultural treasures way back home long and winding. Kim Hyun-seung, Arirang News.
Countries around the world, including South Korea, are experiencing record-breaking heat. It's happening even in the Arctic Circle. Kim Jung-ji helps us gauge just how much hotter it's gotten compared to past years.
0.32 degrees. That's how much warmer our planet was this June compared to the average over the previous 30 years. Doesn't seem like much? Well, it's actually the third hottest June since 1991, and the only Junes hotter than that were just in the past few years. Also using 30 years of data, Europe's Copernicus Climate Change Service said Monday that this June was also the third hottest for the world as a whole. For Europe, it was the second hottest at about 1.6 degrees above average. Daily highs in Spain, France, and Italy surpassed 40 degrees, and the heat worsened the ongoing drought in the region of Italy's Po River. In Norway, the extreme northern villages of Tanabru and Banak reached 32.5 degrees last week, the hottest June day ever recorded in the Arctic Circle. In South Korea, the average temperature last month was 1 degree higher than the June average going back to 1973, when data were first compiled. At 22.4 degrees, it was the third hottest June on record. The average in late June rose to an all-time high at 25.7 degrees. It was also the first time June has seen a so-called tropical night, meaning when it doesn't get below 25 degrees. That happened in Seoul, Suwon, and 13 other regions. Experts say the heat dome phenomenon that's happened for the past few years could happen again this year. Heat domes form when high pressure from Tibet, where it's dry, meets high pressure from the wet North Pacific, which keeps the hot weather trapped. Experts warn the extreme heat in Korea has only just begun. Kim Jung-sil, Arirang News.
We have some lingering showers across the country for tonight. Most of the rain will taper off for central regions overnight, but for southern parts of the country, rain will last a bit longer until tomorrow daytime. Jeju Island will see the most amount of rainfall with up to 60 millimeters. The rest of the south can expect 5 to 40 millimeters. Skies will be mostly overcast tomorrow, but even with increase in cloud coverage, the sun's UV radiation will be strong enough to penetrate these clouds. UV ray index will be in the high to very high range nationwide. Also, a tropical night phenomenon with nighttime lows of 25 degrees will appear again tonight. So please continue to watch out for any heat-related illnesses by drinking plenty of water. Morning lows in Seoul and Gwangju will be starting off at 25 degrees Celsius. As for the daily highs, Seoul will get up to 31 degrees. Chuncheon and Daegu will reach 30 degrees Celsius. In between Wednesday and Friday, the entire nation will see another round of monsoon rain. This round of rainfall will contain heavy downpours. That's all for now, and here are the weather conditions around the world.
That's all from us. As always, thank you for watching.
This season on Arirang TV, we have a new program, What Is? The